for having me. I'm very excited to be here. It's such an amazing initiative to get so many people from the industry together to share their knowledge. Thank you, John. It was really, really informative to listen into your talk, and I've already shared your details with our product development manager. Very excited about all the information. So let me try and share my screen. Excellent. So I'm here today representing Faithful to Nature. And I would just like to give you a perspective from us as a retailer in terms of what it takes to get success in retail, predominantly obviously focusing on online, but I'm going to be giving a few hints for the offline environment as well. So who is Faithful to Nature? Faithful to Nature is an ethical retailer established in 2006. Over the years, we have procured and listed over 20,000 individual products and worked with over 1,000 suppliers. On a monthly basis, on average, we send out around 20,000 customer orders, and we currently have around 200,000 active customers. So we're very proud to have been growing predominantly organically in the space by customers sharing their experience of Faithful to Nature. Recently, about 2 years ago, we launched our first own label products, and we currently have 220 products in the range. It is a range that is really much focused on offering quality, pure, natural ingredient products to customers. It's a very, very strong focus on sustainable packaging. So we have been doing a lot of research when it comes to that regard. Faithful to Nature's differentiating factor is really our strict listing policy that has a very, very strong focus on ingredients and environmental and social differentiating factors of products and brands as a total. So from our perspective, when suppliers approach us with a product, which happens on a daily basis, really, I think on a monthly basis, we get approached with over 700 products, of which half of them will qualify to meet our criteria and the other half will not. So from this experience, what we see, there are like 6 factors that stand out to me that will make a product really successful in the retail environment. The first one is really about the product's positioning in the competitive space. Second is your packaging and your design, because it is what the customer will see first. Your brand story, it is a factor that is gaining incredible importance nowadays. Ingredients and formulations, obviously for nature, Faithful to Nature, that is first spot, but I'm adding it here to give a bit more of a balanced view within the whole of the retail space. 5th factor is obviously the value the customer is getting. And then finally is the way that you manage your retailer relationships. It's a very, very important factor that cannot be disregarded no matter how strong your product or your brands are. So when it comes to product positioning, customer and market insights must really be there to guide your product development process. So it is extremely important to know who your customer is. It's important to know whom you're targeting at. So take the time to define your customer profile in as much detail as possible, from age to gender, geographic location, their family situation, their disposable income, etc. The better you know your customer, the more tailor-made your product can become to their needs and to their situation. And secondly, you need to know your market. So it's important to assess not only the market potential, but also the competitive environment, because the potential might be there, but if there's tons of competitors already out there, you're going to have a harder time to become successful. So make sure that you're well aware of the market saturation, price points out there, etc. I believe it's really, really worthwhile to invest some capital into market research papers or trend analysis reports. If the financial means are not there, another way to do so, which will require more work, but actually pays off quite well, is to research on social media. Follow influencers that are targeting your customer audience or are active in your target market in order to better understand the industry, understand your customer. And then if you are looking at cross-border trade, be always willing to tweak your product based on geographical locations. That might be something plain as tweaking the language on your packaging, or cultural differences, preference, for example, in scents, if we speak about body and beauty care products. When it comes to product positioning, market trends are really, really important. So these are very heavily dependent on which category you're trading in, whether it's food, body and beauty, or home cleaning products. So it's really hard to, in this short time period, to really deep dive into the trends, but it is a topic that is so important, and it gives you so much creative space to design and develop products based on these. So just some of them that are currently standing out, which are a bit more category overarching, are obviously social responsibility, fair trade, low carbon footprint, immunity, etc. So it's really important to, while you do your market research, to really deep dive into what is driving your customer, what is driving the category, what are the trends currently, and what do you expect them to be, and try to tweak your product offering based on these. Moving on to packaging and design, something very, very important, because first impressions do matter. So when it comes to packaging, try to have a look what competitors are doing in order to get inspired from established and aspirational brands, because they usually, not always, but usually they obviously do something right. But very importantly, do not copy. Try to be as unique as possible. Customers are currently very much drawn to uniqueness, something that stands out, something that makes the brand or the product different. On the packaging, it's really important to emphasize your main USPs. So the customer has a very short attention span, whether scrolling on a phone to do their shopping or walking in a retail space. So by being able to summarize your unique selling points on the packaging, you've got a better chance to actually capture their attentions quite quick. So make sure that the USPs speak towards the need or the niche that you're fulfilling. Food products, for example, that might be gluten-free, sugar-free, something plain, that this is what the customer is looking for. You can speak towards the trends that you have your brand and your product in line with, whether it is recycled packaging, environmental responsibility details, or immunity boosting properties when we speak about health products. And then see whether you can capture your brand story on the packaging already, because it's going to help the customer put a feeling, an emotion, and a face in a way to that product. So capturing your brand story might be simple things, more personal aspects of the brand, like family-owned or women-owned business. It is really, we see that increasingly happening, that customers are buying into a brand and not specifically a product. Thirdly, make sure to adhere to labeling regulations. That might sound quite a no-brainer, but a vast majority of the ranges that we are rejecting at Faithful to Nature is simply because of unvalidated claims on the packaging and nutrition tables not being in line with the regulations. So it's something very, very important and worthwhile to invest time and resources in to make sure that you get this right. And then a strong advice to really invest into professional design resources. For the retail space, it's worthwhile to get, so the physical retail space, to get mock-ups to visualize the on-shelf appearance. So what the customer will see when they walk through an aisle. It's a very valuable exercise. And then for the digital marketing space, having quality, high resolution product and lifestyle images of your brand will really revolutionize the look and feel of what you're putting out there. And then lastly, with regards to the packaging and design, don't shy away to get feedback from players in the industry, whether it is your customers, competitors, suppliers, retailers. We actually have ongoing conversations with a lot of people in the industry, and we are always very happy to give feedback when it comes to suppliers being in a product development stage. I think it's very important to get as many valid opinions as possible. Coming to the brand story, I think it's really important to really understand that we as humans, we might forget what someone has told us, but we will very seldomly forget how someone or something made us feel. So when it comes to designing and developing a product, it's not enough to have a quality product or service, but we need to be able to speak about it in a way that it differentiates itself from the rest. So because our customers and we as humans, we're always going to gravitate towards brands that feel human. So it's really worthwhile when thinking about your brand positioning to make sure that it can be translated into something like an experience that can be consumed. And it doesn't have to be complicated or complex. It can be something very easy, just a simple emotion that a product evokes when someone holds a packaging in hand or consumes or unpacks a product. So don't shy away from being authentic, honest, funny and visual. It's really the aspects that are going to capture the audience nowadays based on the broad competition within the field. And just because it's something relatively easy to do in the industry that we're in, organic and natural products always have a strong brand story. It's just a matter of us actually realizing it. Moving on to ingredients and formulations. Driving our customer retention via product satisfaction and consistent quality is a very, very important factor. We might be able to acquire a customer based on a strong product positioning, an appealing packaging, and a beautiful brand story. But if the product efficacy and the quality and the price are not right, we will not be able to retain them. So we need to make sure that the ingredients and the formulations are really doing what we promise the customer through the price and the packaging. For us at Faithful to Nature, obviously ingredients and formulations come at the very first stage when we assess a product. We need to make sure that they're in line with our ingredient policy. And a lot of and we need to make sure that they're actually complementing the product positioning and the brand story. So very often suppliers and product developers maybe struggle a little bit to make sure that their product is matching into the trends that we're currently seeing. So an example I really like is an example of a very plain chocolate slab. So which will sell on its own if, for example, the packaging is biodegradable, the chocolate that is sourced is fair trade, etc., etc. But what can give this product an extra twist is by adding another ingredient. For example, ashwagandha currently is just trends that we are seeing in our retail space. Then it very quickly transforms that chocolate slab into an adaptogenic chocolate slab. It's a keyword that is currently extremely trending, and our customers are very eager to find products that tick that box. Or adding a specific kind of mushroom, a chaga mushroom, is going to make it a nootropic chocolate slab. So playing around with ingredients and formulations does not always need to be very complex. It can be very simple as long as one knows what the customer is after, what the trends are in the industry, and be able to obviously source these ingredients quite easily. We move over to the product value. First aspect of product value is obviously the pricing. And the second aspect are promotions. So consistency in pricing and promotional strategy is a way to convey trust to the customer, because they feel that the brand is reliable in terms of the value that they're getting for the price that they're paying. So pricing is always a complex topic, especially when it comes to smaller brands that are very new in the retail space and are only just starting to launch their brands and products. So when it comes to pricing, it's really, really important to do a very thorough cost analysis very, very early on. Then define a pricing bracket within the competitive landscape, and decide where in this bracket you can and want to be positioned. Ask yourself whether you're able to charge a premium potentially based on any one of your unique selling points, whether it is ingredients or a very innovative packaging, or the sourcing and manufacturing practices. To define what works for you in order to make sure that based on the pricing that you define, you're actually able to run a profitable and sustainable business. Don't disregard taking into account the indirect retailer costs, such as warehousing and marketing fees. These vary across retailers quite drastically, so it's important to start negotiations and conversations with them early on. And then be aware that products within different categories might have different margins based on the retailer that you are approaching. And then lastly, when doing this cost analysis, it's really important to think of how the company will scale. So many times we see that a supplier comes in at a very low cost price, and they haven't considered that as a company scales, the cost actually grows short term. So then we see those price fluctuations happening as the brand is growing, which is not very positive for the customer experience. Second aspect of product value are promotions. Promotions are a very fun and important way to drive customer acquisition and retention. It's really worthwhile having a clear definition of your promotional strategy in place when approaching a supplier, a retailer, and building up a relationship. So it's worthwhile incorporating these promotional strategies into the annual plan so that they don't get you by surprise when the retailer is approaching you to ask for a promotion. And strong advice is to work closely with retailers to help them and have a cooperation in terms of how your promotional strategy can be incorporated into their marketing plan, because only then it will become a success, when you're both at the same time trying to push your products out there. In terms of promotional structures, there are various ways to approach that, whether it is once-off promotions through a discount percentage or a buy one, get one free. It can be event promotions like a launch special, or promotions on different seasonalities within the year, or ongoing promotions, so discounts on bundle purchases or samples. Samples are extremely important factor to drive your customer acquisition on new products, and that I would strongly recommend building into any business plan, especially when a company is starting off, to make sure that the cost of samples is a given, and that you work closely with retailers to make sure that you can provide them with as many samples as possible, because in the end it's the product the quality of your product that will sell. So if you're able to convince a customer, give them this product to try, and your product is strong, then they will come back to buy. Important to take into consideration various price and cost differences between offline and online. In a retail store, for example, it's worth considering whether you have the capability to invest into prime shelf space or tastings, etc. Whereas in the online world, costs for the creation of digital assets, for website banners, social posts, influencer campaigns, it is something to as well incorporate into your business plan, because it will really help you gain exposure of your range. And then lastly, taking the time to really very clearly define your supplier-retailer relationship and to nurture that is really going to help you gain success. So having a really good connection to the buyer of your range within a specific retail environment, the planner, and apart from having very established terms and conditions, I think it's extremely important to have an open communication with regards to, for example, fill and delivery rates. Make sure what is expected. What is the retailer expecting from you? Make sure that your lead times are reliable. Sufficient notice is given on price increases. Be flexible in swapping stock. And then minimum order values. It's always quite nice to have a bit of a leniency when it comes to new ranges in terms of what they offer to the retailer. So trying to keep minimum order values and quantities quite low for a defined, say, 1 to the 5 first orders, it will really make it much easier for the retailer to give a new range a go. But if the minimum order quantities are quite high, negotiations become trickier. Here I just summarized a couple of successful product examples very quickly that stand out because they have done something right in one of those 6 points. The first range is called Butternut. It's a local range of, they started off with nut butters and have expanded into nut milks. They're really hitting the nail on the head in terms of plant-based protein sources, plant-based milk alternatives. So they're just in the right segment at the right time. The design is simple, yet really attractive and clean. It's locally made, family owned. By using just a few ingredients, they have actually managed to diversify into a whole range offering very, very smartly. And they come in at a mid-range pricing. So they don't try to be the cheapest or the most expensive. They've got really reasonable pricing, and they've managed to create a very strong customer following. Grumpy Snacks, again, following the plant-based protein sources trend, snacks, gluten-free. Again, here a bit more of a quirky design, very funny and fresh. It's locally made, it's a small business, and they have a nice brand story that feels very relatable and human. Again, only one main ingredient, but covering it with chocolate just gives it an extra twist. It's very innovative and a very simple product, and they've actually positioned themselves as a price leader in the category. One of the Faithful to Nature products that we have seen a really huge success on. It fits into the clean beauty and fragrance-free body care product. It's a single ingredient product, the shea butter. The design is very simple, and emphasis has been given on a plastic-free packaging, certified organic and sustainably sourced, and also positioned as a price leader in the category. And then lastly, following the snacks trend, which is very, very strong currently, with a beautiful design, very colorful, appealing to the younger generations and probably kids even more. It's 100% natural, zero additives, again, single ingredient, just to show how diverse a product offering can be with very simple and plain formulations, and again, position mid-price range. So at Faithful to Nature, we're seeing really good success on these ranges, and I think they give a really nice perspective on how much can be achieved with simple ingredients, down-to-earth designs, and just making sure that the messaging and the main USPs are communicated in the best way possible. And that was my presentation. I tried to keep it short so we can allow some time for questions if there are any. So, yes.
Thank you, Luiza, very much for a very informative talk. You guys are doing some amazing stuff in the industry, and it's good to get your expertise on what you see working, because you'll obviously have access to those metrics and what have you. And just personally, what I like about it, and I think it talks to this industry, is when you're assessing a product, you mentioned the things that you look at, and your brand story really stood out for me, because in most cases, when a supplier is negotiating with a retailer, if we're just talking in the traditional sense, no one really cares about that. But within this sector and with this industry, and you actually mentioned it, you said everyone in the sector's got a story. It's good, firstly, that you acknowledge that, and that it plays a role in what you're looking at. And I think, just to reiterate that point, is to use that in your communication plan to the market, because the consumers in this market also actually care. We're all quite similar type people in the audience and across the sector. So that jumped out. Another point I also wanted to make, and you mentioned it, around sampling. And I think that in this industry is absolutely critical, because a lot of the products are new and interesting. The ones you just had on screen, chickpea-based products. Initially you might think, well, that's not it might not taste great as a quick snack, or so sampling in terms of trying and tasting and testing in this sector is absolutely critical. And the point I wanted to add to that is if you're going to be doing wet demos in retail, for example, where you're going to catch those shoppers as they go past, get them to try and taste, it's absolutely critical to train that promoter. Because there's nothing worse than being in that environment and the promoter actually doesn't know anything about the products. I had it on Friday. We went to this Italian wine festival at Hyde Park, and we were looking for organic wines and what have you. And one of the Italian wine farms people couldn't travel for whatever reason, so they had to quickly get a promoter. And this poor guy hadn't been trained. So there we were asking about the product, and he actually didn't know. I asked him something as simple as, what is the retail price in euros? And he couldn't answer. And it's just such a disservice to the brand. And when you're in this sector very specifically, and there's so much education, consumer-based education that's required, training that promoter. I mean, all of the efforts around your sampling can be wasted if you just don't train that promoter. So I just wanted to add that. Going back
Absolutely.
to your...
Just wanted to add one
Yes.
point there. We're always very, very keen. We actually specifically make an effort to get our suppliers into Faithful to Nature to train our customer services team and our retail staff as well, in order for the people to know what they're selling, what the brand is, what they represent. It is paramount. Otherwise, as you say, any effort to promote a product or hand out sample is... Sure, some might go through if the taste and the feel and the experience is great, but it's always an added extra to really know and have internalized the brand itself.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, we're obviously planning a live expo when we can get approved to have numbers. And within that sphere, we were planning a dual trade and consumer. And a lot of people have said, why aren't you just doing a trade show? And the answer, quite simply, is because within this sector, the consumer needs to be educated so much, to the point where we, along with Hirsch's, are going to be setting up, or we had planned to, and we will still set up a cooking demonstration area. Because it's one thing, and I always fall to the example of moringa. Moringa doesn't taste that great, and it's green. No one really likes to eat green food or powdered, pasted green food, but it's got so many benefits. So, you know, to drive that education, how do you take a product like moringa and incorporate it in your diet without scaring your children to death? You know, so it's absolutely critical. And well done to you and the team for what you guys have done with Faithful to Nature. I get all your emails and your promotional stuff, and I can just see that you guys are on the up and up, and it's really fantastic. And I suppose without having shelves that you have to be conscious of, you can support a lot more products and new companies and people's journeys than perhaps a traditional retailer with, you know, X amount of space. So I think that's an important role that you guys have there in terms of giving people that gap, you know, that they can get into the market, because a lot of the suppliers are small, really small, in this industry, but there's a lot of good stuff being done. So well done.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, we actually pride ourselves to be working with small suppliers and trying to grow the brands. But we have actually opened up our first retail store. If you haven't visited yet, please go ahead. It's the V&A, the waterfront. And we do realize that it is quite a different approach to retail. And we're happy to be able to still support small brands and suppliers through our online business. Yeah.
I'm Joburg based, but I'll be in Cape Town next week, so I'll definitely pop through and have a look.
Lovely.
Thanks for your time, Luiza.
Thank you so much.
Glad to finally have you on board.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Cheers, bye.